And we are live. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome sauce. All right. While we wait for eyeballs, where are we going to dinner tomorrow?
That is your decision, remember? Option one, two, three, or four.
Are those my only options for dinner tomorrow though?
No, I was just giving you things that are simple that you know. That's all. We can pick elsewhere.
Oh goodness.
Other set of people don't care. Like they're good with whatever.
So who all's coming?
Just Chloe and Kellen.
But I don't know him.
He's great. You'll like him. He really is. He's a good human.
Mm,
Uh-huh.
we
If,
shall see.
if if her mama likes him, I think you should.
I'm not her mama though.
Mm, yeah, but we know.
So there's that.
Hmm. Anyways,
Anyways,
you can
so
you can pick later.
I guess. All right. So we saw this movie on Wednesday.
We did.
We did.
Hmm.
And
It
how
was
did we
good.
go about seeing this movie? Was this like a mutual thing? Like we sat and thought, hey, why don't we
um,
go do this?
no, actually, I think the conversation went like you FaceTimed me and you're like, I have an idea. And then this is how we ended up here.
Rule number one in life, y'all, find a best friend who will agree to your harebrained ideas.
Yeah.
Short of
Without a whole
criminality. If I were to
sure
she wouldn't commit a crime with me, but she would post bail.
I would post bail. Of course, I've done that before where I save money just in case.
Yeah. I told her, I was like, because I'm
Mm.
normally 700 miles away. Now we're like 30 minutes
We're
apart.
about 35. We're
30
about
minutes.
35
So yeah.
ish.
I live in New Orleans, but I'm here in Charlotte for the next couple of weeks. But normally I'll text me like, I have this crazy idea. And she doesn't ask me what it is. She just Venmos me like $10. Either for your idea or for bail money, whichever comes first. Like,
Exactly.
done.
I'm like, let me just give her something just in case. But it's okay. So basically that's how it came about. Is
Yes.
you called me and you're like, "Hey, I have an idea." And I said, "Okay, what's the idea?"
Yeah. For those who do not know,
Mm.
hi, my name is Savannah. I go to the movies a lot. And because I go to the movies a lot, I'm always looking to see if there's early screenings for everything. And there's a way to search for them. You just got to know the right keywords. It's very simple.
Right.
And
Hmm.
just searching early access, I saw there was this early screening for Possum Trot on the 19th.
Hmm.
And I'm like, ooh. And then find out beginning of May I was going to be here.
Hmm.
And so that's when I was like, hey, I'm going to be in Charlotte. We're going to this movie. Like, what are you doing at like 6 o'clock on a Wednesday?
Nothing.
And then we're going to
It
go
worked
live and
out.
talk about it. I don't know how that's going to work, but
Look, I you are the techie person. I just know
I
what to
used to be
do.
a lot more techie than I am now. I'm literally learning as I go. This whole social
Hmm.
media posting on YouTube thing. It's easier on TikTok. You just record yourself and then post and hope for the best. And
Right,
then,
basically.
2 hours later, forget you posted something. And then people the next day are like, oh my God, I saw what you posted. I'm like, what did I say?
That would be me.
Like, I
Except I
love
give you
what you said on Instagram. People at church will say that. I love what you said on Instagram. Okay.
but but which one did I say? What
What
did
did
I
I say?
say? At least I would give you context. I'll give you
Because,
at least something that you talked about.
yeah, because a lot of people are like, don't you know what you said? No. Once I post it, I forget about it. I don't even think about it. I move on to the next thing. I said
Sure
what I
you do.
said and then I move on.
Uh-huh.
Like, I
Yep.
can't dwell. I cannot dwell on it. It's not healthy dwelling on the things you post on social media. Like, welcome to the world of
No,
posting on social media. You cannot dwell. Post it, forget about it, move on. Go eat
I
something.
do.
Go
I
outside.
literally do the same thing. I do the same thing with my blog. I post something. I'm like, all right, cool, we're done.
We're
Like,
done.
what am I gonna do? Just let
It's
it
like, I love
be.
what you said. I'm glad. Whatever it
I'm
was that
so glad.
what I said.
Yeah. Which one did you read? Because
Right.
I don't remember. It's
Exactly.
okay. Oh
So
no.
went to see this movie, Possum Trot. This movie actually comes out July 4th, 1 year
Mm-hmm.
exactly from Sound of Freedom. So backtrack a year. So you saw Sound of Freedom in theaters
I did.
last year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then I saw it as well when I was in New Orleans. And that was, I remember seeing kind of a mini conversation in my comment section. You know, people are like, I haven't heard of this movie, Possum Trot. You know, is it going to get the same traction that, you know, Sound of Freedom did? Who knows? The thing about Sound of Freedom is I had never heard of it. I didn't see a trailer for it. I
Yeah.
just happened to be searching for tickets for July in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
June, trying to plan my next month. And I saw
Literally.
Sound of Freedom, and I'm like, huh, that looks interesting. And I saw it was Jim Caviezel, and that was like, oh, absolutely. I'll do whatever I need to
He's
do to look at that man on screen. Done. Had no idea what it was.
he's
And
a
then people
good
were,
he's a good actor. He's
yeah,
a
and
good
then people
actor.
were just, you know, like, oh my God, are you going to go see Sound of Freedom? Like, I guess so. I had no idea what I was stepping into. So it was very
Literally.
much word of mouth
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
spread that, and then also all the publicity, people screaming, oh my God, this is propaganda. I'm like, we're talking about child sex trafficking. This is not some out of the box topic. I mean, yeah, it's awful, horrible, evil, but it's not
Yeah.
that, you know, out of left
I
field. Like,
no,
what are
but
you
I
mad
think
about?
this is probably the most real they've gotten though about I mean, there are documentaries and docuseries and all of these things that, about human trafficking, sex trafficking, all of those things. But in terms of something like this is pretty honest. Like this is just
Yeah.
real life. Like this is a true story. This happened. So, and a lot of those documentaries are true or loosely based on a true story, but this was not. And so is Sound of Hope.
So, and kind of in the same fashion as Sound of Freedoms, because Angel Studios didn't produce Sound of Freedom or Sound of Hope. Sound of Freedom was sitting on a shelf for several years before
Years.
made it for years before it made its way to theaters. Disney
Yeah.
shelved it when they acquired Fox Searchlight, and it just became Searchlight. So Disney
Wrong
shelved it,
move.
didn't do anything, and then Angel Studios bought the distribution, bought the rights to the film to distribute it, and kind of the same thing here. This was more so an independent film
Yeah,
that Angel Studios acquired the rights to distribute, and then Daily Wire has kind of signed on to help market the film.
correct. And that's what happened here.
So very much word of mouth. But then again, I go to the movies a lot, and I've seen several Christian films this year. So I've seen the trailer many times, but then again, I go to the movies more than the normal person. So it's very possible that you've never heard of this movie. You have no idea what this is about. You didn't know what this was coming
Mm-mm.
out.
Nope.
We're here to talk about it. So lucky for
Yes,
us, we
we
were
are.
able to see it early.
Yes. Okay.
And what were you like
Hmm.
overall? So we did a little TikTok, and
Yes.
we kept talking, and then I looked and I realized it's playing back. Why? Oh, we ran out of time.
We did run out of
So
time.
now that we've had a couple days to process said movie, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Um, I think my thoughts are fairly similar. It's not preachy. It's not one of those movies where it's really heavy-handed and, you know, talking explicitly about Jesus. Now it does, but it doesn't throw, God in your face. It really just kind of it gives you the message and it lets you decide what to do with it.
Yeah,
And so it's not preachy. It's not, which I don't like preachy movies. I think they're annoying. They get on my nerves. Because I'm just like, okay, get to the point. But with this one in particular, I didn't think it was preachy. I thought it moved really well. The writing was beautiful. The acting was great. Like I thought that was cool. And you get some of the characters' stories, like maybe not get the whole story, but you get enough of their story. You're like, wow, she really struggled with this, or
yeah,
that kid was scared of the faucet, like just the water turning on. That's real trauma.
yeah.
So
And you
yeah,
hear about
I
stuff
like
like
this.
this in foster care, where
You do.
children just experience extreme things, and then the PTSD that comes after that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's
But
bad.
in terms of it moving very well, I thought it moved very well, but then it kind of had this moment in the middle where it just dragged,
Yeah,
and
it did.
it felt like they could have cut things up a bit.
Hmm.
Just it
Yeah.
kind of lulled in the pacing a bit, but other than that,
Hmm.
it was fine. I
Hmm.
think I thought
It
it was
moved
fine.
great.
It moved great.
Hmm. Hmm.
And back to, just thinking about the evolution of Christian films right now, is that the standard is starting to raise a little bit,
Hmm.
where people's expectations are starting to get a little bit higher. And I think people are kind of
Correct.
getting sick of the same humdrum, feel good,
Yeah.
crappy, sugar cake,
Yeah.
Hallmarky kind of. I know you love your Hallmark or whatever, but like,
I love my Hallmark, but I don't love it for the reasons that
I
it's a
will never
Christian film.
forgive you for Coffee Shop. Will never.
I still
Savannah,
love
it's
that
such a good
movie.
movie. You'll love it.
Yeah, that was a whole lie.
Like, who do you think I
Um,
am? I thought you knew me.
no, no, it was
She thought
funny.
she could change me.
Yeah, no, that wasn't gonna happen. Yeah,
Not
it's a
at
good
all.
movie to me, but I did not. But I think for me, I take things from a writing perspective. I've never taken it just from like a film because you studied film, and so granted, I don't go to the movies nearly as much as you do, but this was my
Who
26
does?
movies, so like I did pretty good. 26 movies, and like that's pretty good for me. Um,
75.
Yes, I know you got to more. But like in general, I think you're right. I think there's a standard, and I think Angel Studios is holding a standard because they're not just putting out a movie.
Right.
They're not just giving you, basic, whatever. They're giving you quality movies. They're
Yeah.
giving you good stuff.
One of my mutuals on TikTok, she's studying film. She's young, like 19, 20 years old. Her name's
Hmm.
Lauren. I love her to death. She's so funny. But she DM'd me and asked me what I wanted to see more in Christian movies because I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
Because reviewing movies is very hard to review Christian films because the standard is so low. But I told her what I really want to see is just honest, real, raw storytelling. Like
Yeah.
so many faith journeys come from trauma. And,
They
you'll
do.
have these Christian movies that'll like hint at the trauma or show a half second, but really won't go into the depths of it. Like this movie I just watched on Pureflix with Alexa and is her husband's name Carlos Pinavega? And called Mr. Manhattan, where he's, this lawyer living in New York, and they were engaged at one point, and now his brother and sister-in-law were in a car crash, and he has custody of their two kids, and he hasn't
Hmm.
seen them in years. And I'm like,
Yeah.
these kids just lost their parents. He just lost his brother, whom he wasn't, that close with after however many years, and now his ex fiance is back in his life,
Yeah.
and everyone's acting like everything's all good to go and happy go lucky, and minus the couple
That's
of mishaps here and there. And I'm like, they just lost their parents. Like,
yeah.
trauma. Like, these kids would not be this well behaved. They'd be acting out, showing out, nightmares, tears. And it's
Yeah.
just very
Yeah.
sugar cookie and very cookie cutter. And I'm sick of
Hmm.
seeing it. And I understand, Christian filmmakers wanting to create family entertainment, but if you are really wanting to create films that reflect the glory of God and the goodness of God, you have to get real. Why are you so
Yeah.
scared?
Right. Doesn't make sense because the Christianity is messy. Like it's not clean cut. It's
It's
never been
not.
clean cut. It's not clean cut. It never was from the beginning to now. It's
Yeah,
never been
not
that way.
everybody came to Christ when they were like 5 years old.
Yeah. There's not this like uh stigma, well there is a stigma honestly now of like, you know, if it's Christian movie, it has to be very proper and whatever and like that. No, because Christianity is messy. The whole thing is messy.
It's so messy.
Crucifixion was messy. Like it's not the same thing. I mean, so yeah, like
Peter
I
cut off
I get
somebody's ear.
right, and
Hello?
I don't look at if we look at the gospel and say, oh my gosh, it's clean cut, then we don't belong in it. We just don't
No.
because we don't. So
Like,
it
if
doesn't
you're
make
gonna
sense.
do Christian films should be more raw and more to the nitty gritty, the dirt of it all than most movies because our journeys are
Hmm.
so messy. And
They
so many of
are
us came from such dark and dusty and ugly and nasty places.
correct.
And then
Hmm.
and then that journey with Jesus isn't always pretty. My journey with God has been, awful, but I'm still
Hmm.
here. Praise the
Yeah.
Lord,
So
right? But
yeah,
it's hasn't been easy. It's been terrible. If someone were to make a movie about my life, it'd be rated R. It's been
it would have to
rough.
be.
It would
It
have
would
to
have.
be. So
Yeah.
like that's just the reality of it all. Or take
Yeah.
Nala, the young I don't know if you've heard of her, the young woman who just quit OF, the redhead. Adorable. Looks
Oh
like a bunny
yes,
rabbit. If I had to
yes.
like make her an animal, she'd be a bunny rabbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
porn star, OnlyFans, making
L-
6 figures.
Less.
Bank. Like, if you were to make a story about her life, you can't do it the way Pureflix does it. You'd have to do it the way Angel Studios does it.
And it would have to remain rated R because it's dark. It's a dark story. It's not an easy story. So yeah, unfortunately, there is a huge stigma and a huge, like, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it, but it's awful. It's a really misleading way of looking at Christianity as a whole and being like, oh, it's all perfect. It's not. There's nothing
No,
perfect about it, and
it's
it's not
just,
going to be.
it's sad to think like most of our testimonies would not be fit for Christian television.
Right. It wouldn't be. None of it is.
And
And trauma
that's
is trauma.
that's just something to think about. If we're going to really portray what this Christian journey is about, what life with Jesus is about, it's not always pretty and it's
It's
not
not.
always joyful. It's not always peaceful, but God is
No.
good and you can show
Yeah.
God being good in the mud, in the nasty, in the dirt. It's okay to be honest. And I don't know why you have so many Christian filmmakers who are afraid of being honest, but I appreciate Angel Studios
I do
for
too.
not being afraid to be honest. Now, this is, I think, the
Mm-hmm.
fifth movie I've seen from them so far. I know they had a couple of
Mm-hmm.
other movies out in
Mm-hmm.
2023 before Sound of Freedom that I didn't see, but Sound of Freedom, The Shift,
Mm-hmm.
Cabrini. Did you get to see
Yes.
Sight?
I did see Sight. Yes.
Sight, and then this one.
That's
So
good.
five within the
Mm-hmm.
last 12 months, and then they have two more coming out at the end of this year.
Yeah. The
And
Forge. Is that Forge? Is that what it's called? I'm not. Yeah.
no, that's the Kendrick brothers.
Oh
The
gosh.
Nazi dude whose name I can't pronounce coming out in
Yes.
no
Oh, I can't remember that. Oh, Bonhoeffer.
Bonifer, well, you said it.
Bonhoeffer.
Him, and then
Bonhoeffer.
Homestead.
Homestead.
We saw
Yes, I
all
remember
these
that one.
trailers 2 days ago.
Dude, it's a blur. Okay,
It's
it's a
such a blur.
blur. It's a blur. But I like that Angel Studios is putting out quality, but I think you're right. Like I think the only one I haven't
Honest.
seen is Shift. I think is the only one I haven't seen.
That was actually really good.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to more Christian thrillers, to be honest with you. I'm not mad
I
about that
mean,
at all.
I don't I think they're going to put more thrillers out cuz they need
It makes
to.
sense. If you're gonna like take books of the Bible and set it in a modern text or put it in
You might as
a
well.
modern context, most of what you're gonna be creating are gonna be horrors, thrillers,
Yeah,
crime dramas.
basically. Literally because that's all it is.
The nasty part of Lifetime movies, essentially. What do you think David and Bathsheba is going to look like on screen?
Exactly what it says in the
Like he
scriptures.
did
Like
the
let's be
nasty and
honest.
killed her husband
Yeah, on purpose.
on purpose,
Or like,
intentionally.
I mean, Saul's whole story is one traumatic incident after the other. Like it just is. It's interesting because I think this movie gives you a real picture of a family who are in ministry doing the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to do, and that is to care for children that you don't know all of their trauma. You don't know where, like, you know basic things about them, but you do not know all the things that they've
Yeah.
endured.
Now that I've
Like,
had more
truly.
time to process, because we had the one little girl, Terry, and I know you and I were like, we wish we'd learned more. We knew more about where she
Yeah.
came from. But now that I think about, the journey that a lot of foster parents go through, where they don't always know where children have come from and what they've been
Hmm.
through, why should we know all of her story when they clearly don't? Why
Yeah,
should
and I
we be
get that.
privy to that information? And I think
Hmm.
just giving us a step in their shoes and seeing this trauma kind of manifest itself in different ways and not knowing the
Hmm.
root of it or where it comes from or
No.
why she's doing what she does.
Right. You don't know. You have no idea. Like, her story was so hard and heavy, but she did so well. Like, the person that played her, like, her character,
She did
did a
such an incredible job.
phenomenal job of just, like, giving you real life trauma. Like, this is what happens. Like, she was really, really, like, she had a lot going on. And, like, internally. And didn't really, I mean, yeah, she did externally bring out some of the things that were causing some issues with her, but at the end of the day all that was still inside. So
Pretty
yeah,
much.
pretty much.
So there were a couple of themes. And I just want to get your perspective. So we agree
Yeah,
the movie's great. The movie's powerful.
very
And
powerful.
it's honest, it's raw. It really gets into the nitty gritty of it. It doesn't sugarcoat it. It doesn't shy
Yeah.
away from the realness. I think if you're a parent in foster care, some of this might be a little too real for you. It might hit very close to home. You might find it to be very relatable.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. I've had people ask me that, like, how real or raw, and like it's there. Like it's what I
Hmm.
expect from an Angel Studios movie at this point. I expect them to just not be
Yeah.
afraid to get to the truth, however ugly it is. So we both
Correct.
agree it's a good movie. It's great. But there are a couple of things, because obviously this movie is about foster care. So for those who don't know what
Yeah.
this is about a town. Oh, actually, kind of an unincorporated little community in Shelby County, Texas, right on the Louisiana border, if I'm not mistaken.
It's, yeah, it's
But
very tiny.
very tiny, and called Possum Trot. And this happened in the mid 90s. They were actually featured on Oprah's however many years ago.
Hmm.
But they got involved in the foster care system, and it was this church, Bennett Chapel, which is a real church, still going. And they took it upon themselves to attack the foster care crisis. 22 families from that community ended up adopting 77 children. And so
Yeah.
we got to really meet some of these families, particularly the pastor and his wife and the
Yeah.
three children that they cared for. And we know two they adopted. I don't think we ever
Hmm.
found out if they formally adopted Terry, but
Yeah, I don't know if I did.
we do know they adopted the two youngest, and then other children that were also adopted within that community. So it's kind of that journey of this small tiny church with not a lot of space, not a lot of funds, but a lot of faith, taking on this really big task and seeing how hard it is. It's not just, they went into it, I think, the way a lot of people go into it, just smiles and full of faith, like, we got this, this is going to be great. And then finding out it's rough, it's a hard journey. It's,
It's so hard.
yeah. And you really got to see the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of the journey. And yet they stick it out and they keep
Hmm.
faith
They
and they
do.
trust God, when funds are low, when they don't have enough money going around to help upkeep the church. They end up going to another church not too far away and asking for help and really seeing kind of the difference, which I want to talk about later.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what this movie is about. This movie is just about the faith. But I think even though the conversation here really is about foster care, I think the bigger conversation here is the role of the church
Yeah, I would
and
agree.
our responsibility as the church, because I feel like as the church we've strayed away from that. And I think kind
Hmm.
of the ills of society right now, a lot of that is to blame on the church because we've forgotten our purpose, we've forgotten our role, we've forgotten what it is we have been commissioned to do. And I think this film really highlights that. It's a moment, it's small. When he goes to visit that larger church and they're, preparing for their Sunday sermon, because you go to
Hmm.
Elevation, I go to a church in Louisiana, these are big churches and
Huge.
huge. So we've
Hmm.
seen all of that, the announcements and the slideshows on screen. They're talking about how the church as a group is going to go on a cruise ship, and not to put Elevation Church on blast because I'm not interested in
No, I'm not
hosting
either.
an anti-mega church conversation. That's not that. This is not that. But Elevation doesn't really have hands-on outreach. They do with like
Hmm.
individual like church congregants. Like you have to ask for it, but the problem is you have to know who to ask. That
Yeah.
information
Hmm.
isn't always readily available.
Hmm.
And even if you're a leader, like you're a small group leader, or even like an e group leader, a small group, that's my church language, but an e group leader, which is a small
An
group
eager
leader,
footer.
or an
Hmm.
e team leader, which is the name of their teams, their serving teams on the weekends. You may not know who you're supposed to go to if someone on your team or in your group needs help. So that
Right.
information can always be very hard to come by. We just happen to be the kind of people who had access. So we knew
Yeah.
who those people were. But
Hmm.
Elevation doesn't have like hands-on outreach. They've always partnered with different organizations within the community and in the country and around the globe, and that's how
Hmm.
they've always done outreach, which is not a bad thing. I think I remember them talking about how they felt like instead of trying to do something on their own, they wanted to partner with the people who were already doing it well. And I
Yeah.
understand that to an extent, but I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the church when you don't get your hands dirty in the mess that is local.
Yeah, and I think that is the sentiment of a lot of churches, not just in Charlotte, all over the world, where I think I was actually in a conversation with a couple people, maybe several months ago, we were talking about this idea that the church, as the people, not the building, are the ones who are commissioned by God to go out into the world and to like help people. Like, yes, there are, events and things that are very hands on, incredibly hands on, and do a great job with it. But at the same time, I think we forget that the church, at least in the ancient times and now some places, are meant to help with everything. Like the
Yeah.
just as a like they are. It's more than like just giving money or whatever it could be, depending on where you go. It's really about helping people, like literally helping people be the church yourself, right? Like whether that is, praying for somebody or giving, advice or, you know what I mean? Things like that. Like it's just, it depends on it. It's so we've strayed so far from that. But like watching like this Bennett Chapel do this really organically for kids, just like gives you hope. Gives
We
you hope that it's
have
possible.
a lot of what God has commanded us, the church, to do, we have shoved that responsibility or passed that responsibility on to the government. And,
Yeah.
we stick to ourselves in our own comfort zone, in our own convenience. But we see in this movie, Possum Trot, how the government is struggling to help these children, how their
Yeah.
team is way too small. But then we get to see what happens when the church gets involved. We see lives changed. We see souls saved. We see
Yeah.
trauma turned to dust. And
Literally.
I think this movie is just a steep reminder of who we are as the body of Christ. Our job is not to just sit in pews, clap, and sing. Our job is to get out into the world and bring people to Jesus. And sometimes that means
Correct.
getting in the middle of their mess and
Yeah.
cleaning up with them. And I think we've
Yeah.
forgotten that. We are
Hmm.
trying we this is what the world that we're living in right now, this is what happens when the government tries to do the church's job.
Yes,
We've
it is.
forgotten our role. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten what God has commissioned us to do.
Yeah.
Cuz if the church got involved and got involved in the foster care crisis, we wouldn't have a crisis.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't have a crisis at all. I think we would be a lot we wouldn't need to put any children into foster care. Like really, truly.
No.
I mean,
And yes, you have all these nice, fun organizations doing things, but ultimately, we shouldn't have to have these cute, nice little organizations. We
no.
already have the church, but the church is not doing anything.
No, and I think that's the unfortunate reality of the world we live in. Not that
We've
churches don't do their job. I think some do, but I do think that the majority of us as people of, God, of, who are followers of Jesus, it's sometimes really easy for us, like you said, to stay in our own lane and not really kind of like disrupt the status quo for better purposes or anything, but like just we just kind of stay in our own lane, unfortunately. Now I don't truly believe in staying my own lane because I really do feel like if God has called me to do something, I should do it, right? We are no strangers to obedience,
mm-mm.
to doing things that are hard. We're no strangers to none of that. So
Savannah, how did you end up in New Orleans? God said
yeah,
go and I went.
literally. How did I end up in Charlotte? Same way. Like
Well,
it's
I
not something we
mean,
just
do we get it right every time? Nah.
no.
Nah. I
And
probably mess up
we're not
more than I get it right,
we
but
do.
I try to listen.
Yeah, we try to
I
listen.
think we've allowed society to scare us, the church, into a corner, and we're
That
way too
part.
silent for our own good. We need to get back to the days. Obviously not all the things associated with those days because people love to bring in all that extra. But we
No.
need to get back to the days where the church was the center of the community, where everything you needed, you could go to the church. Whether you believe in God or not, whether you go to church or not, if you need something, you can go to the church. That
Right.
doesn't
And I
exist
think that's
anymore.
awful. No, and I think that,
Nowadays, if you need something and you go to the church, the doors are locked.
yeah, and it's really sad that we've come to that point. Unfortunately, a lot of that is just the again, the world we live in. But um But yeah, I would agree. That's a lot of that. I think in Possum Trot, you just learned you learn so much what a small if a small town can do. I'm talking really small town can do because basically everybody knows everybody. Like it's a small town.
With no money and
Um,
no space.
no space, no money, and like resources are like very limited, but they did it anyway. And it's really because they really surrendered and trusted God with their resources because they didn't like, yeah, they had to get help, and there are things in the movie that you see that are hard for them to do, but they do it anyway. So I think this movie is doing exactly what it says, giving people hope, or at least trying to give people hope, not just about the foster care system, because that thing is crazy, but also about, hey, if a community can come together that is super small to help 77 children, what can a big community do?
Right. And what I hope people get away from this, not just a broken heart for children who are in
Right.
need, but also almost a rallying cry, just a reminder of what we are capable of when we lean on God, when we
Correct.
fully trust God. I feel like we've just
Hmm.
gotten a little too comfortable in our day to
Yeah.
day. It's
Yeah.
very convicting. I'm not going to lie.
Very. Oh yeah, it's convicting, and the you can sit in that theater and listen to the stories and watch the movie and sit in silence and really take it in. I mean, we did. We kind of sat there for a minute and took it in for a minute. Like it was, granted there was a lot going on, but it just felt heavy, like really heavy leaving the theater thinking, wow, not only is the system broken, but there are so many children that are just in need of what she was talking about in the movie, love, and like a lot of patience.
A lot of patience.
Lot of patience. I mean, they did the very best they could with Terry, and you could see it. Like she was probably the one in the whole thing that I was like, I could see a lot of people that we know in her. Like
Yeah.
trauma, struggle, things that they ran from, did, whatever. Like there was a lot of people that we came into contact with that really do remind me of Terry.
So Anne and I led a high school girls e group together. Again, that's just Elevation's word for small group. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
for what, nearly 2 years? I was present for like a good year, just there, and then
We were,
we combined forces and we led together.
it
And
was about 2 years. Hmm.
we our girls were the island of misfit toys, basically.
Yeah,
They're probably gonna see this at some point and be like, why would you call it? Because you were. Okay,
they
you
know,
you name a problem, we had it.
literally.
God. God, parents on drugs,
Drugs,
extramarital affairs,
a lot of
God,
that.
a lot of that.
One night stands,
One night stands,
really big, heavy affairs that are just
criminal
odd.
issues,
Criminal issues, drug issues,
parents problem, like you
parents,
name it, we had it.
anger
And
issues, severe anger issues. Like
severe
there was a
anger
lot of that.
issues, a lot of that. And
Mhm.
we weren't equipped for that. We didn't
Yeah,
we weren't
we were
prepared.
in over it.
But in the same way, when you sign up to be a small group leader for a bunch of high school girls, you kind of have this image of your head of being, oh, it's gonna be so beautiful. We're gonna get together. We're gonna study the Bible, and you know, and we're gonna have prayer and we're gonna have worship sessions.
That's not what happened.
It was enough to remind those girls to bring their Bibles.
Yeah, or like, um, or even just like, okay, let's just talk about why your issues need to come before God. Like, let's start
It's
with
like I can't help you with this. This is above my pay grade,
like,
and I don't get paid.
no, and it's just very like, I mean, we dedicated quite a bit of our time. I mean, probably most of our time outside of our jobs to care for each one as best we could,
As
right?
our girls were so
Very,
bad, we had a code word. If anybody asked you who your e group leader is, we gave them a name.
we
You
did
tell
give them
them
a
this
name
name and then run.
and then leave because it was just one of those things where like these girls were fighters, and then fighters like courageous fight. No, we were like talking real fighting, like hood fighting kind
No,
of
at Youth
moment.
X, and you know, our girls were ready to get down in the front. I said, if y'all want to get in front, we gotta get there early. And they're like, okay, okay, okay. So
And they
we get down
did.
to the front, get to the early, get their seats, and people are fighting over seats. And I'm just like, I'm not even getting in the middle of this. And I think it was Alex who came to me. She says, you know, one of your girls, she was fighting. I was like, oh no, oh my gosh. And I went over there like, you got that seat? Like I didn't teach her how to get those
You
front
did.
seats.
You did. I was like, I'm gonna stay out of this one. But it's just so sad to
It's like,
like,
oh, I can't believe she did that. I'm gonna sit here and pretend like I did not teach her how
but
to
you
do
know
that.
what? But you know what? That I appreciate so much more life and the way that God really has grown them. Because, I don't keep up with every single one, obviously, but like for the most part,
They're doing
they've
good.
they're doing good
They're doing very well. Con-
considering some of their
Considering
circumstances.
where so many of them came from, they're
Yeah,
doing
they're
very,
good.
very well. But
Yeah, God's grace.
it's those kinds of experience. You go into it with these expectations and these high hopes, and you realize it's not going to be that easy, and it's so much messier. And you have
Yeah,
to, and the thing about youth ministry, I think you can kind of compare it to foster care. Is once you're in it, you're in it, and
yeah,
walking away has consequences.
yes, it
And
does.
with youth ministry, I was always said like, if I'm in this, I'm in it. Like you can't
Right.
just, it's a lifelong thing because you never know when one day you'll get a text or a phone
Yeah,
call.
yeah,
And
and we have,
if
we
you're
we
going
truly have.
if you're going to get involved in the lives of children on that level, spiritually, emotionally,
Yeah,
you have to be prepared for the toll that it takes, the time, the patience, and you have to allow yourself to evolve
you
and
do.
just
Yeah,
mature in a way. And it,
yeah,
it
it
was
was
it was
hard.
hard enough dealing with these girls, bless their hearts, once a week,
Hmm.
sometimes twice, because we had Mondays and Wednesdays for the girls that couldn't make Mondays.
Yeah,
Think about dealing with some of our girls times five every day
in
and
a and with deeper trauma,
with
probably.
deeper
Like,
trauma. I can't
yeah,
imagine. It was enough to get a phone call at like six something in the morning
yeah, that's happened too. A
or a
lot.
phone call at like 11 o'clock at night. Like, girl, don't you know I'm elderly?
Like we sleep.
You know I'm
But
tired, right?
we do answer, and
But
that's
okay, I'm
not.
I'm here. I'm listening. I swear.
And there are times where I was on the phone until 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired for work the next day. But I did it because who else is? Like
Who
who
else?
does? And I mean, and so like I really resonated with the mom in Possum Trot, like where she was like, I can't do this anymore, and she was like very frustrated about it. And I was like, that's real emotion.
Yeah.
Like that is a whole real emotion because there were times where I think, I mean, real talk, we were gonna walk away, and it because we were so
Yeah.
frustrated, and we were
Like,
so, it
are
was
we
just
saying
what it
that
was.
our experiences as youth ministers or whatever is the same as a foster parents? No,
No,
but we understand the impulse
the
and
impulse.
we understand what that almost there's parallels, going into it with these high expectations and then getting in and realizing it doesn't look like that and then remembering that you've committed to it and there you
Yeah,
can't just walk away
no,
and allowing yourself to
no,
change and evolve and allowing your heart to expand
yeah,
because you think you don't have enough room in your heart and in your soul for another human being, especially a human being that doesn't belong to you, that doesn't have your blood, that doesn't have to answer
yeah.
to you. And
But they did, and
it's
it was
amazing.
crazy.
It's amazing what you learn about yourself when you work with children
It's
of
crazy.
any age. It's amazing what
Yeah,
you learn about yourself when because while children they can be rough, they can be tough, it can be hard, especially when you're dealing with kids with trauma. It can be
yeah,
heartbreaking and sometimes it can feel like too much, but there's something peaceful about it. There's something
hmm,
peaceful
yeah,
about working with kids. There's this reminder that you know what, life is not that serious and life
yeah.
is not that bad. And you know what?
No,
Chill out, slow down.
yeah, that part.
It's children really do remind you that God really is good.
He really is, and I think there's a
And so much of that extra stuff just doesn't matter. There are so many more important things to be
no, there
worrying
is,
about.
and
And I
I
think
think we grew from that. We
And
grew
then I
from
think
it.
for adults, for us, they made us younger in a way. We got to kid around
Yeah,
and just
we did.
relax from like
We
long
did.
days and just be
It's
goofy.
stressful. Yeah, and it was great. And I think I mean, I still have like just like memories that will pop up every now and then, and I just chuckle because they're just like they're memories where these girls were very, um, like loved each other and got along and did all these things, and then there are times where
Oh
they didn't
yeah,
like
I
each
had
other.
a memory pop up of Hannah from the youth team, and I was like,
Ah, yeah,
look at
and
her.
she's a whole mom now too, which
She's a
is
whole
crazy.
mom. It's so
I
weird.
know.
Married, mother. Gosh, still
Like
serving the
it's
Lord. Amen.
amen. Like yes. But like at the end of the day, like I just think those situations, I personally I wouldn't take them back. I think they grow us and they make us better, and I don't regret those 7 years of just like purely being so immersed into it. And so, and the thing is, when you do get out of it and you take a step back and you learn how to be kind of your own person and who you are, and you're not attached to anything, it's an interesting difference. Like it really is. It's a really wild ride. And, you find yourself less stressed out, but you're like, but these kids still call me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Yeah.
like,
That somebody
and
asked me, it's like, because I have no patience for grown people. Like, how are you able to do? Because I still do youth ministry in New
yeah,
Orleans. They're like, how are you able to do like youth ministry? And then I serve in, with children's ministry. Like, and you have no patience. It's like, I got patience
adults.
for days for kids.
Oh,
Like,
for
I could be
days
with
for
these babies
kids.
all day.
It's kids. It's
These
not the
17-year
adults.
old, 15-year olds, like, they want to talk my ear off for hours. Let's go. Adults, you got 10 minutes, if that,
You have five.
before you get on my nerves. Like, little
Yeah.
homie just got here. Little homie's still learning how to breathe. He doesn't know how to human yet. He hasn't quite figured it
He,
out. His frontal lobe is still developing.
he still doesn't know how to do
Like,
anything
there's
yet.
so
Yeah.
much grace for him. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just learned how to use deodorant. I'm not gonna be mean to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. There are some children that I teach that need to use deodorant. But yes, this is different. So yeah, like with kids, definitely a lot more patience, and you have more capacity for it. For adults, I think because they should know better, like you would think they'd know better. It's the hard part of like we have to show grace to all of them, to everyone, but it's very difficult with adults sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've watched like this kid in Possum Trot who's like their actual biological daughter, like absolutely just like lose it because she doesn't know how to be a sister to this girl who is going through trauma, who she's never experienced that kind of trauma before.
Yeah.
Like she came face to face with it. So like that's hard. And
That's the hardest part about having trauma in general. I hate overusing the word trauma, but that's one
but
of the
it's
hard parts
true.
of having trauma is knowing that what happened to you affects everyone around you. And you can't always
Literally.
control it. You can't always control that
No.
outpour.
No.
It's heartbreaking at times.
It is. And it's
But
and
yeah.
it's so sad. And it's very sad.
But I hope that we got so off topic, but it's all good. But
We
what I
got there.
hope for this movie, I just hope it's a wake up call. Number one, I hope it's a wake up call for people to be aware of the foster care crisis.
Correct.
That,
Mm-hmm.
we need more families, we need more homes. I hope it's a wake up call for churches to remember their place, their duty, what they committed to when they decided we're going to serve the Lord and what that looks like, what that means, our role
Mm-hmm.
in the body of Christ, our role in society. I need this to be a kind of waking the sleeping giant kind of moment for churches to remember
Mm-hmm.
that we have allowed the government to do too much and we need to take back some responsibility.
Agreed.
But I also hope
Agreed.
it's a wake up call for individuals who may be inspired. They may
Mm-hmm.
want to get involved in youth ministry or children's ministry. And I know some people are like, well, I don't have patience for kids. I said the same thing.
She did. She really did. And
I
it's
said the same
like
thing.
you
When
were, and yeah.
somebody asked me, I can't remember, it was I don't know if it was Brad before or Zach or who it was. Talking about like, are you gonna lead a youth small group? I can't do it. I have no patience for kids. None. Those that they breathe, they smell,
Um,
they talk, can't do it. And now I'm like, I would rather deal with these kids.
because they're just they're very they're still learning,
They're
and
still learning.
they're still learning, and sometimes in those kids we can see ourselves as young, like
Yeah.
if I
I hope it
if I had the
inspires
same thing.
people. I
I
hope
hope it
people are
does
inspired to
too.
get involved in children ministry or youth ministry
Yes. Or
because
even
just
just like mentor. Like
mentor.
mentorship is so important.
There are
I
a
like
lot of
it.
little things that, they kind of hinted at, they kind of showed, but it can go
Yeah.
over your head if you missed it. Where like she's
Hmm.
packing up, to go from that one foster care place to go somewhere
Yes.
else, and she gets a trash bag to put her clothes in. That is actually very common. A lot of these kids, when they go from place to place, they don't have duffel bags, they don't have book bags. They
No.
carry all their belongings in trash bags.
Literally.
And I think if you're like, well, how can I help her get involved? Talk to your like local agencies to see what is needed, or
Yeah.
see if you can find a foster care family and see, hey, what they need, because I follow a bunch of, I live most of my life on social media at this point. I follow several foster care families on social
Hmm.
media, and just seeing what they have in hand. They need clothes, they need simple things like toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, and bedding. And because every time
Yeah.
a new kid comes in, they got to clean everything up and restart over. Sometimes, books, gift bags, mini fridges, because a lot
Literally.
of foster kids come into a home and they don't feel comfortable going into the common areas like the kitchen or the living room. So having a mini fridge in their bedrooms, where if they're thirsty, they don't have to take that awkward step. They can just go in there and get a bottle of water. Having their own toothbrush, or donating duffel bags for kids that have to go to place. That way, they don't have to
Yeah.
carry their belongings in a trash bag or a Ziploc
Hmm.
storage bag, because that's very common as well. And toys, stuffed animals, something that they can carry from place to place. Journals,
Yeah.
Bibles, stuff like that.
Yeah. So much. There's so many organizations, honestly, that um do take donations. There's it's just like the most like basic things that we probably take for granted are the things that they don't have or don't have enough of. And you're right, like even just hygiene, like basic hygiene
Deodorant,
stuff,
pads,
deodorant, like
tampons for girls.
literally,
Can you
yeah.
imagine being a young girl going from house to house and you're on your period?
And you have no idea what you're doing. Like it's so I mean, even just being a woman who is on her period, just in general, it is hard to feel comfortable in your own
You're already
skin
uncomfortable.
already. Like you're already there. So like and because of that, it's
Stuff
very
like
important to
that.
make them feel like
That's so normal and every day. Oh, period's coming. Got to go to the Walmart and load up.
right,
Got to make sure I have
right.
enough Excedrin and ibuprofen to last
Like
me
to get like
at
and
least the first 2 days.
I had
Right?
better wear some dark clothes for the rest
Right.
of the week.
Okay, got
Like
it's
it's
laundry, got to do laundry. Like stuff like that, that is just so normal and mundane, that
to
might
us.
be trauma, like a big deal and like an inconvenience, or just an extra hassle for a young girl who's
Yeah.
doing it alone. Oh, that heart makes my heart.
It's hard. And so like there are I definitely am doing
Cuz I thought I was dying.
no, it's not fun. So I think there are probably local organizations wherever you live, depending on obviously your between your, just ask. Salvation Army is a really good resources to ask people who are like, "Hey, do you know?" Because organizations know other organizations, right? Like people know the people. I mean, churches do this all the time where they like partner, like Elevation partners with multiple different organizations. Love Week is coming up in like a month,
What,
which is
like end of
uh,
July?
yeah, it's like end of July. It's right. Yeah, it's end of July. Where like it's 2 weeks of just like going out into the community and so many different like things and but like even doing something like that and then getting connected to that organization and then donating to them directly is so helpful. Like I have several really good friends who are working on different things, and like I have a friend who I is a coworker. I work with her. She's like, well, I work with her during the school year, and she donates things to us all the time. Like just in general, like she just does. Um, or if like it's excess of something, she'll bring it. Or and if she can't do that, she will give me organizations to like, hey, donate these things to this organization, not because they are affiliated with us, but they're just organizations that are in need. um a lot of a lot of the foster care system now, unfortunately, is like it's just drowning in so much paperwork and people, and they just need just as much love, and
They
it's
need
just
bodies.
they need bodies, they need people who to help, and like even just like giving them the time of day just to listen is such a really good resource, and like, and I think the best thing we can do, if those are things that you're not comfortable with and you really want to stay in your own lane, I would encourage you to get out of it and just like really pray for somebody, and then let the Lord lead you the direction he, and sometimes here's the thing, when you open your ears to God, he may make you uncomfortable, and he probably will,
I
and
think
you're
that's
he's
another
going to.
big theme of this movie is stepping out of one's comfort zone.
Correct. And I think that's something that they teach them early on. And that's something that their pastor, Reverend, um, really emphasized early on
You
in this
know,
movie.
I think it's interesting the church differences here because
Hmm.
you have, a lot of people love to harp on mega churches, which we both came from.
We
And then
do.
you have their smaller churches, which I'm sure I don't know about your churches, but I've been to smaller churches.
I've been at
And I
smaller
think
churches too.
when you have a smaller, more community oriented church, you have a more, better advantage of being involved and invested in the community, especially in your local area. The thing about
Hmm.
mega churches, I think people forget, is that mega churches don't start off as mega churches. They start off as
No.
small churches. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to do those local things because you're so focused on creating space and making sure the bodies that are coming in have somewhere to sit, that your priorities can shift a little bit.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's always the hard part with mega churches. That's why you have mega churches that are so heavily emphasizing, you know, teams on the weekends or small groups, doing the things that the big organization can't do, but people can.
Right.
And but if you're
Hmm.
part of a local congregation and you have a smaller church and your church isn't really focused on growing, which is fine. Your church is more so we're about serving the community, then do that. You can do what a lot of these mega churches can't. It's not so much that they have money. Yeah, they got the money. Well,
Hmm.
they have the resources, but things move so fast and it's
They
so
do.
hard to keep up. I don't think people realize how fast things move at these big churches. That's really hard to
It
slow
does.
down and look at what's in front of you. But
Yeah,
if
there's a
you
lot of
come from a
that.
smaller church, you can.
You
You can do
can,
what they
and
can. Let them gather the
hmm,
bodies and create space and feed people, milk and baby food. And then when they mature and they grow,
right.
they come to you, these smaller churches.
Yeah.
We can work together. We can work
That's what we're
together.
called. Well, that's what we're called to do, is unify. And I think that's like something
Like,
that we've
let
forgotten how
mega
to do.
churches do what they do. Let them gather the bodies. And then when
Oh
those people
yeah.
mature, they move on to you. Because eventually you outgrow a mega church. You outgrow it.
We outgrow so many different things that like we just like we outgrow. I mean, as you get older, obviously, because we women and men develop differently in terms of their frontal lobe, but like we evolve into better people, and God really uses that anyway. Like he uses you where you're at. But you're right, there are some mega churches anywhere who are much better about bringing people to be like, okay, let's take these people that we have because we have more people and like send them out, versus small churches are like, hey, I have more time and like that time to give to you, and maybe more attention is maybe the better one. And here's the thing, nobody is small and like to God. Like God will use
No,
whatever you give him. And there are some people that I know that when God gives you a little bit and you steward it well, he will give you more. And that's how it
yeah.
works. And that's what he did. This chapel, this like is still going. It's been
And it's
years,
still small.
and it's still small, but this community is so well known now because of what they did. They're not known for their size of their church.
Like
They're known for their people and their heart. Like that's
22
what they're known.
families, 77 children. A small church did that. And
Literally.
they did it. And I
And the
think
church is big.
we're not called to fight. We're not called to do all this church infighting. Who's doing church right here? Who has prettier lights? Who has bigger seats?
I don't think
Who
it
has,
matters.
it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. The point is, what can you do with what God has given you and what has God called you to do in the first place? And then focus on
Correct.
that. And if that church over there is failing, let them fail, God will
Let
deal
them
with
do
them
it.
accordingly. What has God, people are so busy looking to their left and their right that they're not looking at the cross. What has God called you to do? Stop
Yeah,
griping on social media about this mega church over there, this mega pastor over there. What has God called you to do to further his kingdom? What has God
correct.
called you to do to help the least of these? Stop worrying about
Yeah.
what people over here are doing. What are you called to do?
Well, and the Bible tells us to get the plank out of our own eye before you talk to somebody else about theirs. So like
Right.
it doesn't it's not a it's if we would spend less time griping about other Christians and other people who are followers of Jesus and just really focus on our inward, like who we are. It's hard to be like, you know what, it's convicting. Okay, like it does hurt when we have to focus on ourselves and do things that we have to work on, but that's what God calls us to do. Figure you out before you try to go figure somebody else out. And the other thing is, you're right, small big churches, like mega churches, whatever you want to call it, came from small beginnings, very small beginnings.
Very
They're
small.
and let's be honest, most of them are church planters. They are church planters at heart. That's where they came from. That's where they still act like. Now, granted, some of them are not like that anymore, where they're like, they don't have that same personality, but some of them still do. I mean, off the cuff, I can name several people who are very still small planted churches up here and in their heart, but work so hard to help the community. And you're like, if you only knew that they came from a very small beginning and had a very rough childhood and struggled most of their life, and now look where they're at. So we also have to be careful to not diss somebody else's blessing, because God will address you. He's not going to like ignore you.
Like,
So it is
people
what it
have so
is.
much audacity. God did not give you the gift of trash talking.
No, we never did. And that's the thing, is like people really, and here's the thing, do people get criticized all the time about communities and churches and stuff? Yes, but like
Yes.
where is it coming from? Like where is that
Where's
heart?
that
Like
coming from? God didn't
where's that
call
coming from?
you to trash talk. That is not a
You
fruit of the
are
spirit.
you are not judge and jury. Sorry. You don't get to be
No.
both. You don't get
Chill
to be
out.
both.
Focus
Yeah,
on what
and
God
so
called you to do and let God handle the rest. Is the battle his or not? But either
right,
way,
and but that's
I
what
need
Possum
this
Trot
to
did.
be a wake up call of
I did, yes.
sorts. I need this to
Agreed.
wake the sleeping giant. I need this
Yes.
to shake and rattle the bones of the church so they remember
Yeah.
who the heck we are and what our
Hmm.
purpose is in society, because we've strayed from it. We have
Yeah.
really allowed the government to do our job for us, and the government sucks at it. That's why everything sucks. That's why we have so many
We
children tangled
unfortunately
up in the system, because that's our job, is to care for the widows and the orphans, for the
right.
sick and
Scripture
the
said,
lame.
yeah,
That's our job. We were created to
it
be the
is.
center and the focal points of these communities, and yet we've allowed
Yeah.
society to push us off to the side, where we're operating in our own lanes and doing in our own thing and closing our doors and not letting culture get in. To an
Yeah.
extent, yeah, obviously, but we have to find a balance. Something has to give.
Something has to give or God will give, and that's it. Like it's gonna be okay. And so there's a lot of discrepancy with that. Like
Like,
where
don't
like
think
people
you're
are like,
so
well,
high and
I do
mighty
this
that you
and
won't
then
end up a letter in Revelation. Like,
no, and like it's so funny
there's
that
room
people
for a
are like,
couple more churches.
there's a yeah, and like we are all going to be at, not like the only thing that's guaranteed in life. I actually wrote about this is death. So like I think that
We're
you just
all
have
going
to
to
go with
be
it.
held to the same account. So
Same account,
get off your
and
high
so
horse and
yeah,
get before God and say,
yeah,
okay, God,
I
what have you gifted me
yeah.
with, and how can I use it to glorify you?
Which is what we all are called to do, is just love God with what we have, and and he does the rest. And so I think there's a lot of lessons in this movie, but there's also a lot of lessons from this little tiny church in the middle of nowhere, Texas, literally just doing what
The
they
thing
could.
that God has literally called every church to do.
I mean, it's gotten the eye
It's
of so
embarrassing.
many people. It's really sad because like this church is tiny. Like you see the pictures and you're like, this thing is like a little itty bitty place that has so much heart and like love
Like my
for
living room
people.
in New Orleans, it's bigger than that church.
Literally, which is so funny because I was thinking about the other day. I was like, that church is, you could probably put the whole church in Savannah's living room.
Yes.
You could put it in my living room too. It's not that big. It really isn't. It's not big at all. But it's like it's just a reality of like we have got to learn to go back to being the church. Just be the church. God's not asking you to be perfect. You just be the church. That's it. He's not asking you to do much.
No. Any
But
final thoughts?
good movie. Go see it. Um, get ready to be convicted, I guess, because there's a lot of that going on in this movie.
I feel like that's the purpose. That's the main thing. I don't think that was their purpose. I don't think their purpose was to
No,
talk about the
no,
church. It was really to bring awareness to this issue. But I think that is what people should come away with, that
yeah, I
I'm
think so
called
too.
to do more than what I'm doing. I'm called to
Correct,
do so much more. And I'm capable of
correct.
so much more because I have Jesus
Yeah,
and
and I think that's amazing.
I can do all things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there. Yeah, go see it. Seriously, go see it on like that weekend that it's out. It's a phenomenal movie. It's got everything. If you are just not interested in getting preached at, go see it because it doesn't do that. It
That's,
just
yeah.
doesn't.
It's not a preachy Christian cookie cutter movie. This is raw. This is
No,
real. What is it even rated? Should probably look that up. But
I don't remember, but it's just good.
I'm looking it up real quick to see what it's rated. Not me living on RottenTomatoes.com.
Yes, you are.
Off topic while I'm looking this up. I'm so mad. I already talked to you about this, but I'm gonna gripe about it again anyway. How the Bike Riders comes out this weekend, right? Well, I already saw it Monday. It was the mystery movie at AMC because there were already early screenings at other places, so AMC just lined it up. Why is it that like 2 days before the movie technically premieres, that they decide to say, "Oh, by the way, we're gonna show the Nosferatu trailer. We're gonna premiere it right before the Bike Riders exclusively this weekend." Not
Why
the
would
movie
they
that
do
I've
that?
literally been waiting to see for almost 2 years. I've been waiting on this. So Nosferatu is, I think it's 1922 German expressionism silent film. It is a classic. If you've never seen it, highly recommend. Like, pay the money, just watch the dang movie. I don't care. Like, if you
That's
ever
good.
study film, at some point you're either going to watch this movie in whole or in pieces because it's classic German expressionism. But I digress. I have been waiting to
Really.
see this remake because it's Ryan Eggers or whatever name. He did The Witch. He did The Northman. Like, this is a man who just knows what to do with beautiful lines, beautiful color, lighting, and then he's taking on this classic character Orlok, who's based on Dracula, and
Yes.
Bill Skarsgård, who's basically my husband at this point. Like, I'm in
I
love with
mean,
this man. Is going to be nasty, ugly as he should be, but he somehow makes it look. I'm just excited to see this 6'4" man be a vampire because you
it's
don't have
gonna
to do
be.
a whole.
It's,
He's just such a full body actor. You really don't have to do too much CGI craziness with him, like in the movie It, because he was Pennywise the clown in the movie It, both movies, part one and part two. And they had moments where he had a lazy eye, where that's his eyeball.
yeah,
Okay,
because that's
he
him.
does that with his eyeball, and he's 6'4", so he's tall and he's lanky and he's already scary and intimidating to look at. But he has such a baby face, so I'm very interested to see what they do with, because he
Yeah.
has the body for horror. He's tall, he's lanky, he's intimidating, but he has such a sweet
The
face. You don't know
fact
what
that
to do
they.
with him, which is why it was genius to cast him in Barbarian, because he's one of the first faces you see, and you expect him to be the bad guy because every time we see him, he's doing something nefarious. So no, you're like, what's the bad thing? So you're expecting him to be the bad dude because he's tall, 6'4" and lanky. And the fact that he's so thin, it makes him look taller. And then he has such this sweet face with these big blue eyes. So you don't know what to do with him. He's very off putting. And then everything happened in Barbarian, but we're not going to get into that. I'm mad that they just told me, and I switched out my ticket because I was planning on seeing the Bike Riders yesterday at the just Thursday night, but then I saw it Monday at AMC, the mystery movie. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to go see that. I'm going to go see The Exorcism instead, which was terrible. Should have just kept my ticket for Bike Riders and saw it again because I loved it, not just because Austin Butler was in it, by the way. And I could have seen the Nosferatu trailer, and now I probably got to wait until Monday. I'm
Yeah.
okay.
When is that movie coming out? When is it coming out?
Christmas Day. Who
Oh,
releases a vampire movie on Christmas Day?
somebody who does it, who wants to,
Jesus
who
has
wants
been
to.
born, and we're gonna watch vampires. Am I gonna watch it on Christmas Day?
Yes, you are.
Absolutely.
Yes, you are. You are gonna go
Shoot.
watch it.
Are you
I
kidding
mean, Christmas.
me? Well,
You're
that'd
gonna
be a
walk into the
I
theater.
don't even like Christmas. I mean, I like the Jesus part of Christmas, but I don't really like the rest of Christmas. Like, I can do away with all that extra
I
stuff.
I'm the opposite of you. I love Christmas. Obviously, I love Jesus, but like I love Christmas, and so like it's okay. You are going to have it's is it disrespectful that they're putting it out that late in the year?
That
Yes.
yes.
Yes, it's disrespectful. However, I think it's going to be at the very least at this point you probably end up seeing like what 150 movies by that point.
I'm gonna hit
Anyway,
100 movies by the end of August
yeah, I know. So you
because
could
I'm gonna
probably
hit I'm gonna hit 85 movies by the end of June.
Yes, because
I came
you've seen
into
a lot.
June at like 60 something. I'm going to
The
hit
fact that
80. Yeah.
you're gonna
I
see
didn't
quite a
even mean to
few
see that
movies.
many movies this month. I
You
thought it was going
really,
to be a light month.
it's
But
not.
anyway, so the movie's rated PG-13. It's around about
Okay.
2 hours and 15 minutes. Angel
Ish.
Studios is distributing. It, Peachtree Productions. Joshua Weigel is the director. It
Yep.
stars Nika King, Demetrius Gross, Elizabeth Mitchell. Elizabeth
Yep.
Mitchell, if I remember correctly, she played Susan Ramsey, the social worker. Yes. Okay,
Yes.
so for those who are like, who is that? She is Juliet Burke in Lost. For those who remember, she was
Yes.
in Lost. She was also in a couple of episodes of Law and Order SVU.
I remember
She's
her from SVU.
I love her as an actress. She's amazing. She's done some
So sweet.
pretty phenomenal
She's
things.
had some pretty tough roles too. Like some roles that are just like, okay, this is this is your lane. She does a good job though. She does a really good job. Um, PG-13, a little over 2 hours, not too bad. You honestly don't feel the 2 hours because you're in the
Mm-mm.
theater for, and you're just like, oh, it's over. Okay, gotta get
Even with
sad.
that lull and the drag in the middle, you still don't feel. You just kind of notice. Maybe we're just nerds. I don't know.
I
Um,
think it's. I think
So
I notice
Anne
more
is
now.
a writer. She writes a blog, and then I do
I
what I
do.
do on TikTok and whatnot. But I also studied film in college. Like that's
Correct.
basically what I got my degree in. Well, I got my degree in screenwriting, essentially. But part of that was film analysis, aesthetics. I did take some editing classes, some
Hmm.
production classes and whatnot. But
Yep.
the study of film, it ruins you. Don't ever do it. Never. If I could give anyone advice, never take a film class. Never
It's
take a film
fun.
class.
It's fun, but it will ruin the way you
It
watch
ruins.
movies.
I will. It's been years. I haven't taken a film class since I think maybe 2009, and I still don't watch movies like a normal person.
You can't
You
because
can't.
you can't unsee what you've
You
seen.
can't unsee what you see. You can't unlearn because we were taught the way we our this is so off topic, but anyways. So the way my very first film class I took was my freshman year of college, 2006, second semester. So it was called Development of the Cinema. And it basically went from, the early 1900s, the beginning of the industry. Because keep in mind, this industry is only a little over 100 years old. It's very young.
Yeah, very
So,
young.
and all the I'm getting off topic. So it starts from like the early 1900s. So we watched some smaller experimental silent films that they did as they were experimenting with film equipment. The Great Train Robbery, which you've never seen. You could probably find it on YouTube. We watched Birth of a Nation, 1915 D.W. Griffith, which is the most racist movie in the world, but it is
So
widely considered to be like the beginning, the birth of the film industry, one of the first feature length films. It's a 3 hour long silent movie and it sounds awful, right? But it was actually interesting when he introduced the movie to us. He said, this is what it's about. This is what you're going to see and hear. We laughed. It's because it's ridiculous. To our
it,
18-year-old 2006 brains, the concept is just so ridiculous. We laughed the whole time. But the whole point of
mhm,
watching that movie was just to see where the industry started and just how
yeah,
innovative it was for 1914, 1915. Just the technology that was used, the way they crafted the story, and also just the
literally.
different things they were doing with cameras. Because for the longest
Yeah.
time, the camera didn't move. They really were mimicking stage plays where people would come in and where people would come, on and off stage, people would come in and out of frame. The
Yeah.
camera wouldn't move. So if you watch like old silent films, you'll notice the camera
It
does
doesn't
not
move.
move.
Nope.
So we watch, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. We watch, different smaller silent films. Talk about, Charlie Chaplin, Keister.
Which
I can never
there's so
remember
many
his name.
different there's so
We
many different ones, but it ruins the way you watch film.
It does. And then you get into these, when you come out of silent film and into talkies. So when sound was
Hmm.
introduced to,
Yep.
and the turn in that industry, we ended up watching Singing in the Rain to kind of
I love
educate
Singing
us a
in the
bit.
Rain.
I love that movie because that movie
It's
it's a
good.
musical, but it's about that transition from silent films to talkies and how so many
Correct.
actors struggled because they didn't have the voice for it. They were good
Yeah.
dramatic face actors, but now their
But never a
voice,
voice.
they you had a lot of people that couldn't transition. You had a lot of jobs that were lost because if you watch silent movies, you'll see like the cards, where in
Hmm.
between the scenes they'll have the title cards which will explain to you what's happening in the scene, or that'll, have the dialogue. That wasn't needed anymore. So, And then you
No.
had to change the way you filmed movies because now that sound is introduced, you used to have these big old lots that people would film on where you could have up to like 10, 15 movies being filmed at one time and nobody's disturbing anyone because there's no sound. Now you need an individual sound stage and you have to
Literally.
control, and they didn't have the technology that we have today where I can run this through Final Cut Pro and take out some of the background noise. They can't do that. So they had these hot sets, no
No.
air conditioning. You'd have the camera guy in a box with the camera
Literally.
to kind of filter out the noise, and the stories
So
of people
much.
passing out, dying from standing in this box trying to film. And so we go through that, the 20s and then the 30s we watch Gone with the Wind, which is spectacular if you've never seen Gone
It's
with the
good.
Wind.
It's
Yeah, and
good.
then we watched Casablanca and Citizen Kane. When it comes to like film
Casablanca
nerds,
is so funny. I like Casablanca.
Casablanca is amazing. But with
Yeah.
film nerds, you have there's two different film people. You have people who will say Casablanca is the greatest film of all time, and people who will say Citizen Kane is the greatest film of all time. I'm a
That's
Citizen
hard.
Kane girly. Love Citizen Kane. And you go through that's the 40s and we go through each decade. So watching the evolution of film, the introduction of new technology, the changing of the addition of color because it was very gradual. The addition of
Yes.
color into the film and then also the changing of genres and how the genre shifted because we had the Hays Code which was like anti obscenity in film. So there was like no cussing. You had to end films a certain way. Films had to end on a happy ending. If there was infidelity, you couldn't show it. It had to be implied. So stuff like that. Then the
Yeah.
different genres, film noir, and the MacGuffin
So
and stuff like
many.
that. And then we get into Alfred Hitchcock, and you go into '70s, and you talk about black exploitation and the introduction of the building of black cinema, which black people have been making movies. You'd never know this, but black people have been making movies since the literal jump. Since the beginning of the industry, there has been a black presence in filmmaking. Always.
Mhm.
It's not something that just kind of came about. But then you had black exploitation really bringing black culture into cinema in a way that hadn't been done before. Before,
Yeah.
everything was almost kind of uniform in the way they approached things. But then it was almost like
It
this
doesn't.
separation. It was beautiful though, where we're starting
Yeah.
to really see this reflection of the different pieces of American culture in cinema. I'm a nerd.
Yeah. For,
Then we go into the 80s and we watch, Do the Right Thing with Spike Lee. Go into
yes.
the 90s and the whole thing. And as we're seeing, the evolution of the industry and the evolution of film, the introduction of technology, we're learning all these terms and our teachers telling us right before we watch a movie, look out for this, look out for that. We're watching this movie because it displays color in this way and they're using a metaphor and they're using this type of lens. And so we go into these movies to watch them looking for certain things. And the problem is that you're sitting in a class and it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. But then you go to the movie theater and you're like, I can't turn it off.
You can't because you're just not. You're following the same pattern that you followed in class in the movie theater. And it is hard to you can't shut it off. Like you
And
really
it,
can't.
it makes doing
Yeah.
film reviews a little difficult because I have to remember that not everybody has studied film. And so the
No.
things that I notice, you may not notice. And that
Mm-mm.
doesn't mean that I am just so sophisticated. No, I just studied film, so I was taught to
You
notice
were
these
taught.
things. And what I
Yeah.
notice may not go over your head, but I can at least explain to you why you saw what you saw and why you felt
Right.
the way that you did. I can break that down for you. So
Yeah, and that's hard.
having to balance that out when doing a film review because it can be very difficult because there are times when I can get a little nerdy and I'm like, we're just gonna roll with it and hope for the best.
Because I think it's really good to like hear both sides of those because like I go into a movie because I've been writing for so long. I see writing. It's really weird. Like I see it and I can't unsee that.
Oh
And so when I
God,
go in,
because you
I
haven't learned how
just
to write
can't.
screenplays.
Right. And
So
I
I
just
learned how to
I
write screenplays. I learned how to write scripts. So that was what I got my degree in. And so learning the format, it's strange because you can almost see, so and so comes in, he does this, does that, he's wearing this. Like you can almost see it
yeah,
playing
you
out and you
can.
can you can almost read it as it goes and it's a very weird thing knowing how
It's
a film
weird.
is put together and then watching it
So
you think it takes away your appreciation, it takes away from the magic. It doesn't. When you know what happens behind the curtain, it makes it that much more special.
correct. And I think that's the point. Like I think with certain movies I don't know, there's some of the writing, like when I watch a movie and I see the writing, I'm like, oh, that wasn't good. or that was, like, because it just depends on how they say things, or when an actor is saying something or an actress is saying something, and you're like, I don't like the way that that was written because that was
Mhm.
weird. Like, it just makes it awkward, and it's not it. And but then sometimes you're like, wow, that was a really good line because it's a good story. Like, you have to tell a story. Storytelling is, I mean, obviously, like, what I see, the storytelling of the movie, but I I do see the bits and pieces of what you see every now and then, but it doesn't ruin the movie for me. And it doesn't ruin the movie for you either. It's just you can't unsee it. That's
You
all.
can't
You
unsee
just
it.
can't, you can't
And
unsee it.
learning how to write film was so difficult because I've been
It
writing my
is
entire
hard.
life, but I was so used to
Right.
writing not writing fiction, writing prose, short stories,
Right, right.
poetry, and so that I was so used to writing in that kind of narrative structure, and the structure for screenplays is so different. So having to learn the
Yeah.
difference between active voice and passive voice was
So hard.
so hard. And it was such a weird transition because screenplays are written in an active voice and you can't, so I can write in a story, a short story, what someone is thinking, but I can't write that in a screenplay. Instead, I have to describe what they look like and somehow try to convey that emotion through an active voice. Instead of saying he was thinking about his mom, I would have to write something like he stands in the middle of the room with his brows, ridged here, or he looks down at his feet, or he stares off into the distance, or he looks over
Yeah.
his shoulder and sees a portrait of his mother to imply that he's thinking about his mom and hope the audience gets that. Or he,
Right.
plays with a thing on his wrist and we know that's a gift from his mom. Something like that to
Yeah.
really convey what's going through somebody's head. And it can be very difficult to make that switch when you've been writing a
Yeah.
certain way for so long. So
Yeah,
writing
that's
screenplays
true.
was very challenging, but once you get the hang of it, it's addictive.
It's fun. It's
So
really
much
addictive.
fun.
Yeah. It's fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that in college too.
And it's vulnerable. God, it was the
It's
most vulnerable thing I've ever
very,
done.
very vulnerable. Very vulnerable, but also like so it is addicting, you're right. Like, it depends on, but I didn't like, I think when I was in school, I focused so much on different like other things, but like the activities that that we did in theater, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of musicals, so that's just kind of the world I lived in for a long time. But like, again, seeing writing and writing in general all the time, you just can't unsee the things that you see. Like, you can't unhear it. Like, you can't. So, in a movie like this, there are pieces of it that I still think about, and I'm like, wow, that was that was a really good line. Or there's a joke or a punchline. I just finished the series. I guess series. It's not series. It's just episodes. Of the show on Apple TV called the last thing he said to me, or the last thing he said. Um, and I read the book. Like, I actually read the book, and then go back and watching the show, the episodes. I was like, I am so glad I read the movie, or like I read the book before I watched the movie, like the set, because I'm like, oh, that's what
Yeah,
they were saying. You know what I mean? Like, it makes more. I mean, they followed the book fairly well, but it gave me visual. Like, it gave
yeah.
me like a picture of what I was seeing. So, yeah, I don't know.
The
It's a
the
it's a
movie
good stuff.
The Hunger Games is a hard one to watch from like
Yeah.
a film study perspective because when they're in the cornucopia and they're running and I'm always thinking like I know how they did this. I know how they filmed this.
because
And
because
then
that's
it
what you
makes it
see.
that much more cooler because now I'm thinking, okay, how they block this, the choreography to get it down, and then just
And they had to film it in pieces and
in
not like in a
pieces,
whole. Yeah,
in
and the stunt
pieces,
doubles that were
the
there,
stunt
the
doubles
stunt.
involved, and then the death of Rue in the Hunger Games. If
Ah,
into how she died, the camera work, the way the
hmm,
lens goes. Do you see it glitching?
yeah, it did now.
Weird. So
Okay,
seeing the way as she's fading away, seeing the lens fade in and out as she goes, like who thinks of stuff like that? That is
you
just
have to.
innovative and it's
Yes,
creative. And I think that's why I love the art form so much is that it's constantly evolving and it really is a DIY kind of
it
industry.
really
Do
is.
it yourself. Like if
Yeah,
you got to figure it out. It's a fixer upper. It's We're making it
Yeah.
up as we go, and we're just gonna say, "Oh, I want to do this, but I'm not sure how to get it done." So we're just gonna figure it out. And we're gonna make it up, and then all of a
Right.
sudden,
Like you have
it's
to
a
figure it
norm in
out.
the industry. Like the Zoom dolly. If you've ever seen Jaws, when he's sitting there and they realize
Hmm.
there's a shark in the water, and the focus of it's like they zoom in on him and then zoom out on the background at the same time. Hitchcock did that, and he said, "Oh, this will be cool if we do this," and now it's become a industry standard of a zoom dolly or a zolly doom,
Which
depending on
is
what you call it.
cool.
It's like
That's
people just
cool.
doing random stupid stuff to do things, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we could totally do that." Like Citizen Kane. Well, I really, really want this low angle, but how low can we get the camera? We can't get it that low. It's gonna hit the ground. Well, then remove the ground. So they
Like,
dug a hole in the floor and said, "Well, let's just put the camera in the hole in the floor," and we got this angle that has just surpassed time. That
can you
is
imagine somebody
studied.
trying to do that though? Like sitting with a camera in that awkward angle?
Like
Like,
thinking like we want the angle lower. How do we get it lower? That's the film industry. Well, like just take out the floor.
but if I take out the floor, where am I going to stand?
Like
Exactly. Like,
okay,
you're going to do it anyway.
the film industry is the Florida of industries.
It really kind of is. It's
Like
crazy.
you want us to
You
do
know what?
what? You want us
Yeah.
to put a camera in a helicopter?
Okay. You want us to
Okay.
do what?
You want us to
Or,
do what?
or people like um
You want us to put
Christopher
a
Nolan.
camera on his chest and have him run?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or people like Christopher Nolan who doesn't like CGI and just
You want to build a
flips.
bomb?
You want to build a bomb? Cool, let's do that. Oh,
Okay.
let's draw
Oh,
12.
oh, we're gonna flip a semi in this movie. Okay, we can CGI that. No, we can just flip the semi. But we can only
We're
do it
gonna learn how.
once. Like you
We're
want to flip
gonna
a
do it once,
semi?
like a for real. Like I want,
Okay.
and you need to be in it so you can make it work. Like what?
What?
Yeah,
Like how we're
people
gonna flip?
who.
Like that's the film industry, and I love it.
Yeah,
And it's
I
so it
love
was
it
like,
too.
how can you watch this? Because I love the art form.
The art form is just it's
It's
art. It's
yeah, the
art.
people suck sometimes, and it's a political money grab. But I love the art form,
Annoying.
and when
You know what?
it's beautiful, and I want to just talk about it all the time.
I love it. It's good. It's good
But
stuff. I'm
that's
glad.
all I got.
That's all I got. I think go see the movie. It's really good. It really
So
is.
just a reminder that is Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, directed by Joshua Weigel, comes
Mhm.
out into theaters July 4th. Check your theaters. You
Mhm.
may be able to see it a day early if you don't feel like driving anywhere on the 4th.
No kidding.
Because that's a Thursday, and I'm not driving anywhere on the 4th if I don't have to. Mm-mm.
No, I'm gonna.
So,
Well, I'm gonna be at work, but it's okay.
on the 4th of July?
Yep. Mhm. Yep. Don't ask. Just let it go. It doesn't make sense, but it's
That's
okay.
disrespectful. You getting time and a half?
No. No, we're not. That I know of. I should preface
They
that
gonna
I
feed
know of.
y'all?
Yes, they are gonna feed us.
Okay, because when I worked at a movie theater and we worked Thanksgiving
Mhm.
and Christmas, we always got food.
Well, we're gonna we're
Granted, it was
gonna
like
we're gonna
barbecue, but
we're gonna find out. We're not sure how many that'll happen, but okay. It's okay. Hey, after that though, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna sit. We're
for real,
just
for
gonna
real.
chill.
So, what's the next movie you're seeing? And then we'll head out.
Um, oh gosh. Probably Inside Out because I feel like I'm so behind. Inside
That's okay.
Out, and then
No one's as
and then
crazy. Not everyone's as crazy as I am.
I did get my ticket to Twister, so that is going to happen
Mm-hmm.
because I grew up around Twisters, so it's kind of
You
like
did. She's from Kansas. Everyone
I am.
originally from
Yes,
Kansas,
originally
where
from Kansas, and
they live there on purpose. Like, I can't talk. I live in New Orleans, so
we watched tornadoes from the driveway, not necessarily from the basement, but it's okay. We learned kind of. Hmm. Remind me to show you a picture of a bunch of dads standing outside watching this tornado, like with their cameras.
I would.
It was cool. But it was distant. I mean, the tornado was far enough away. It was going the other
I
direction.
never understood. I was like, why would people do that? Until I was in New Orleans and we had a Category 2 hurricane outside, and I wanted to go outside because I wanted to see the wind.
Because
And
it
my
was
roommate's
just
like,
entertaining.
"What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just wanted to watch." She's like, "No."
Yeah, those are the people who are like, we've done this too much. You don't need to. And then we're over here fascinated by the thing. They're just fascinated about that. All right.
So
Well,
my week is
that's all good.
crazy. Next week, I'm taking a break because I've been seeing so many movies days in a row, and I'm taking a little break, so I'm not gonna see a movie again until next Wednesday. And then
Which
it's
is so
Wednesday,
different.
Thursday, Friday. So Kinds of Kindness on Wednesday, Quiet Place Day 1 on Thursday, and then
Yeah.
Daddy-O on Friday, and then that ends
Yes.
June,
Which is
hopefully.
crazy. We'll
And
see.
then I won't see a July movie until July 3rd.
Right. True. Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good set.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. That was fun. Until your next harebrained scheme.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in.
See ya.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.